Welcome to Burnout and Beyond podcast. I am your host, Victor Bartley, and in this space, we explore burnout intervention measures in the lives of people. Burnout syndrome is not anything new, but has been an existing pandemic within mainstream culture. Leaders in various industries have faced this in silence, but we want to encourage every listener that you are not alone and burnout is an invitation to begin again. Today's episode is part 2 of a conversation with international best-selling author Jacquie Abram. Jacquie has been recognized by Forbes for her courage in the area of workplace racism. Her book series, Hush Money, is based on the true events in the life of one black woman who exposed workplace racism and kept her job. Join the conversation as we continue to discuss the dynamic presence of burnout that comes to work with us. Are you ready? Let's continue to grow beyond the burnout with Jacquie. In the workplace burnout. Let's join the conversation and grow beyond the burnout with Jacquie. No, wow, that's that's so huge, and again, just want to plug as you are enticing our listeners to get it. I want to also encourage you at this point to also read it, because it does lay out just a very clear strategy, a subversive strategy, if I can use the language, to combat what is clear to the marginalized victim of racism and oppression. And I absolutely love how again, as you said, it's not just talked about the experience of racism, but also the combating it in a what is deemed professional manner.
Yes.
Because not only are you in the caste system Black, but as Malcolm X said so many decades ago, you're a Black woman,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the
That's
most
right.
unprotected,
Yes.
most violated, most disrespected
Most
group in
neglected.
neglected group in
Yes.
society
That's right.
is the Black woman. And so you're and on top of being Black, there is the being woman.
That's right.
And so yeah,
Well,
go
and
ahead
you
and share
bring
a
up
little bit
a
more.
well, and you bring up a valid point. So this is a very powerful book on so many levels, because it teaches our people strategies that they can actually use today to fight back. One of the most powerful chapters in my book is called The E in email stands for
Mhm.
evidence.
Mhm.
And it teaches you how to create evidence, how to use email as a weapon, weaponize email and use it to your advantage. And there are so many other strategies in this book. But Victor, racism is not the only ism as a Black woman that we deal with in the workplace,
Mhm.
and that we just deal with in life in general. We are dealing with not only racism, we're dealing with, sexism, colorism. I mean, there's just so many
Mhm.
things as a Black woman, that we are dealing with. And so there is a part 2 to my book.
Mhm.
Um, it was released in January, and it literally picks up exactly where book 1 left off to tell the rest of Ebony's very riveting, captivating, provocative story. And
Mhm.
so, if there's anyone in your audience who is currently experiencing racial discrimination or sexism, you want to pair these books together and read them back to back. Your eyes
Mhm.
will be opened, you will be empowered. And Victor, even for white people who
Mhm.
want to get a deeper understanding, it's interesting because of all the people across the world who are buying and reading my book, 50% of them are white. And what they are telling me is that they know racism is wrong.
Mhm.
They want to help, but Black people are telling them, we don't want your help. You don't get us. You
Mhm.
don't understand us. You've never experienced this. You're part of the problem. So, for the white person who wants to get a deeper understanding of what racism in the workplace looks like in a real and authentic way,
Mhm.
Hush Money gives them exactly what they seek. Because when they step into the shoes of Ebony, like I said earlier, they feel it and they see it as if it's happening to them or someone
Mhm.
close to them. And Vice President Kamala Harris said it best. In order to understand someone's circumstances, you have to see and
Mhm.
feel and smell their circumstances. And that's what Hush Money gives to the white person who wants to get a deeper understanding of what we experience working while Black.
No, that's incredible. And as you've answered really the question that I was going to ask about just the difficulty that overcoming this stressor that often leads to burnout for blacks and brown uh, people in our communities is the fact that it's so difficult to overcome.
Yes,
But I love how the book takes it in bite sizes
yes,
of sorts, and rather than trying to defeat the elephant, it takes it, one bite at a time, as it is instructed in the saying. So
yes,
the layer of racism is obvious and the most prominent element of it. There are two other layers that also caught my eye in the series. The other was the historical voices that were impacting your current way of seeing yourself, or rather the way Ebony saw herself, and just the family dynamics that were tied to um, the experience of Ebony.
yes,
um there were a couple, I can't recall specifically the chapter and book, but they're one of the major plots, subplots of the story was the poor relationship with Ebony's father,
yes,
and just the damage and um the trauma that was caused from the neglect, from the dehumanization, even
yes.
the messages that she was not wanted, not important, didn't matter. um,
Well, and he was brutal because he made her believe that she
mm,
was unlovable and that she was ugly.
mm,
And so, if you can just imagine a child who was still very much a toddler, you know, hearing these words from the only father she knows. He told her she was ugly as a child because she was dark skinned,
mm,
and that helped shape who she became as a woman. This person who just had very low self esteem, who, was always worried that she wouldn't be accepted. And then to
mm,
go into this horrific work environment and have the reality that her father had put in her play out in real time in her life, it validated in her mind what he said to her as a
yeah,
child. And so she just had so much psychological damage from both experiences.
yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's so important, for women,
Mhm.
for men, because I love, while it wasn't the main plot of the story, it was articulated enough to show how Ebony connected the dots of the messages that I received as a childhood are what's affecting me in my current
Right.
situation now.
Right.
And that's such a important connection to make, because of the fact that our childhood deeply affects who we are now. That we don't run away, that as we get older we don't forget it, we don't lose it, we don't become detached from it, but it follows us, as though in many at uh, describe it as we have this inner child within us that wants to be
Mm.
set free.
Absolutely. That is a
Yeah.
great way to say it.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. So the woman who inspired this story, she is still healing from so many different things that all collided, that all intersected, and came to a very powerful, but also just dangerous conclusion, because without that healing, you stay in trauma.
Hmm.
You know.
No, absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely. I love what one mental health professional said, that we can't change our past, but we can change the meaning of it.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
yeah, no, that's absolutely powerful. Um, there's one other area of the book, a subplot as well,
Hmm.
that adds compounding layer to what is lived out in Ebony's life as burnout, from my estimation, and that is the health crisis, the personal health crisis
Hmm.
um, that's tied into all that is already existing,
Right.
in the decline and ultimate demise of Ebony's mother.
Hmm.
Um, you know, Caregiving is a common reality today that affects so many professionals. Um, so many people are taking care um, um, children that are special needs. So many are taking care of parents,
Hmm.
spouses, and just other loved ones. They're in the role as a caregiver, even if it's not a position that they're professionally qualified for.
Right.
What from Ebony's story, what makes the caregiving journey an added stressor to what's already existing for her?
Well, if you remember, and this is coming out of book two, okay? So in book two, by this point, Ebony's mother has been diagnosed with terminal. So, she had cancer diagnosed early on, but by this point, it has advanced, and it has now been classified as terminal.
Hmm.
And so Ebony was extremely, extremely close with her mom. They had just a very close knit relationship, and so in addition to all of the stresses that she's dealing with, at work with the racism that she's experiencing, having to finally deal with the past and the colorism that she's experienced from her father. So in addition to those two stressors, now you've got the health stressor of her mom. And if you remember, there was a section in the book where Ebony just said, I just want to go back to work. I need to focus on something else besides worrying about mom, because it's killing me to constantly worry about mom. I just need to focus on something else. So she was actually choosing between these three horrific buckets that she had
Mm.
to focus on going back to work, even though she knew the potential for racism was still there. But to her, it was choosing the lesser of two evils because
Wow.
of the racism stress, even though that was horrific. The stress of losing her mom was even more horrific, and she couldn't deal with it. So she said, I just need to focus on something else. And she felt guilty for
Hmm.
wanting to focus on work and to take her focus off of worrying night and day about losing her mom.
Wow. Wow. No, and I know for so many caregivers, you're speaking not just their language, but you're speaking to their heart,
Mhm.
because the unarticulated guilt that
Yes.
so many are burdened under, the shame of,
Yes.
because it's been interpreted as shameful,
Yes.
as you said, that Ebony feels in the book. It's so important to, again, to realize that you're not alone, because in my work as well as a pastor, I've heard parishioners and family members say this, and just
Mhm.
struggle with loving the person and
Yes.
then also being burdened by them suffering.
Yes.
And so just the tension that is held in that very precarious scenario is one that people definitely need the empathy
Mhm.
and the non-judgmental space of support,
Yes.
because it's just difficult. Nobody knows how they respond to those scenarios when life throws you those curveballs, and you have to face it and you have to endure the suffering. There's no reset button. There's no switch to turn it off, right?
That's
There's
right.
no control that you have over it. Um, all you can do is essentially go through it. And, I think as well, just again, the compounding elements that Ebony is dealing with highlight a number of things. But one of the things that really stands out to me is just how people that come to work are full humans,
Yes.
and that what the person that comes to work is not just the professional that's
Right.
been hired to do the job, but it's the person that's been impacted by their past. It's the person that's dealing with things outside of work that are also impacting what happens at work. And what's crazy, and I know it's extremely realistic, particularly for those of the Black community, is that even in these times of high stress, resilience is what we've consistently done, is what we've consistently
Right.
shown, and still produce quality work,
Yes.
and still have shown up.
That's
Um,
right.
Still have
You
shown
know,
up.
we put on that mask, okay, with the fake smile.
Hmm.
We go into the lion's den and we still give 100% as the lions are circling us and doing their best to destroy us.
Yeah. Wow. 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 I want to ask you, as we wrap up, I want to ask you a question. As you've written Ebony's story, and you reflect from even your own experience, if Ebony could add a third book, is there?
There actually is a third book coming be-
Okay, awesome.
because if you notice, Victor, Ebony was the type of person, she was going through, the most horrific forms of racism. But because of who she was as a person, and because of the faith that she grew to have, because faith played a really big part in her seeing her way through the storms that she kept finding her way herself
Absolutely.
in.
Absolutely.
Um, but Ebony was aware. She was aware, even though most people may be closed off and stay in their little bubble. Ebony was aware of the other Black people and people of color in the organization who were also suffering, and she wanted to help them. She wanted to change their circumstances too, as well as her own. So, Ebony, I mean, if you think about who she is, Ebony is this woman who's living in poverty. She's already been through so much even before the story begins. We know that she was abused by her husband, and she was in a safe house for abused women. She was neglected by her father. She was loved unconditionally by her mother, but she had a sense of wanting to help others. And so when she encountered racism in the workplace, she decided to take on this battle, even though many people would walk away and say, I'm not going to get involved. I liken what she did and what she experienced to really a modern day story of David against a corporate Goliath. Because Ebony is this poor girl, this poor woman. She doesn't have the resources and the leaders that the organization has, this empire that's targeting her. All she has is her mom. And yet she takes on this battle with the love of her mom and pure faith. When, like I said, most people, even Black people, people of color, would turn away and say, I'm not going to get involved because then they may target me. And so she took this on because she wanted to help the other people in the organization as well as herself.
No, I absolutely love, just the connections that you share. And, I think your story that is shared or that inspires the book around Ebony's journey is so powerful because it's again the full picture, relative to the full picture of how things unfold over those 5 years in Ebony's life. And as I was reading it, I couldn't help but think about the lawsuit that Brian Flores is filing against the NFL, and
Yes,
just the whole scenario of proving racism, and the piling evidence that is very clear, obviously to us. But again, as you're saying, you got to prove it.
that's
Uh,
right.
pro- Proving it is a different thing. Is very different from just experiencing it.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. It's
And
so.
my book can help you prove it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
My
I've got to ask you. I have to ask you though. If it's not telling to book three, if Ebony could do something different, if there was something that Ebony could do different, what would be the one thing that she would change about what unfolded?
you know, if she could have done anything different, she probably would have taken the settlement money, okay, and forced her mom to get those extra treatments. She, remember in the story,
Mhm,
she's, they've never had any money.
mhm,
They grew up very, very poor, and now they've got money. And she wanted to use part of that money to um, help her mom get the best doctors money could buy, and her mom said no, and she listened to her mom. But sometimes she wonders if she made the right decision.
mhm. No, those are that's definitely a a challenging scenario for sure.
Yes.
Um, with the loss that Ebony experiences, and definitely understandable. Jacquie, it's been a pleasure to have you on and to share such a very real reality that Blacks experience, but particularly Black women experience as we are
Yes.
in the month of March and celebrating Women's History. You're another sister that's making history, and so we salute you
Yay.
and celebrate you in this month, as well as your daughters and those that are in your community that are doing the same thing. We just before we go, we just have to ask you, what is the best way to connect with you, to learn more about you, and then of course to get those books?
All right. So, just one more time. The book that you want to start with first is Hush Money: How One Woman Proved Systemic Racism in Her Workplace and Kept Her Job. You can get this book on Amazon as well as the sequel to this book. Again, the book came from very humble beginnings. We are not writers. We wrote this book from a place of pain. Sold it from the trunk of my car because we didn't know what to do with it, 11 months ago. And now it is an international best-selling, award-winning book. It's been featured in Forbes. It's #1 on Goodreads and best eye-opening African-American women's fiction. It's #9 on findthisbest.com out of thousands of books in top African and African-American and Black Christian fiction. And so if you buy my book on Amazon, because again, we couldn't get a publisher, so we self-published on Amazon, you will be supporting me and my daughter's efforts to continue fighting racism one book at a time. And if you want to talk with me, I love talking to people. I get contacted from all over the world. The best place to actually reach me and get a response, there's 2 places that I'm very, very active on. LinkedIn is the first place that you'll want to message me. If you message me on LinkedIn, you are guaranteed to get a response. And then if you want to have a conversation, we can set up a Zoom meeting. The other place is Goodreads. Victor, I wasn't very active on Goodreads until I'd say the last 2.5 weeks, when I realized that there was a movement happening on Goodreads and my book was at the center of it.
Wow.
Over the last, I would say, 2.5 weeks, my book has been added to the to read list by, I think it's going on 200 people now, and more
Wow.
keep getting added to that list every day. So I have become very active on Goodreads and talking with people and sharing my experiences. So Goodreads and LinkedIn, you are guaranteed to talk to me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And again, we thank you for the work and the labor of love and healing that has been poured into this series. And we salute you and celebrate you, and wish you a tremendous peace and healing and comfort in your continued journey. For
Thank you so
those
much.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. For those that have listened to Jacquie share Ebony's story, you, again, just want to reiterate that you want to get this book series because it will remind you that you're not alone in your own experience of burnout and your own experience of workplace racism. And that even as you've heard me say before, burnout is always an invitation to begin again. Thanks again
Yes.
for joining us today. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it. Do yourself a favor and support this movement and go buy the book series Hush Money. You won't be disappointed. The story is so palpable, so relatable, and inspiring. In part 2 of our conversation, Jacquie shares the strategy of the effective email from the book series. In the book series, Jacquie shares this strategy of evidence that Ebony learned along the way through hard lessons. If workplace racism or discrimination is something that you are experiencing, this strategy challenges you to courageously fight back with prudence, strategy, and composure. In the words of Michelle Obama, when they go low, we go high. Thanks again for joining this episode of Burnout and Beyond. To see previous episodes, visit the podcast page on victorspeakslife.org. If you or your organization want to grow beyond burnout, share your information by clicking the Book Victor icon. And until next time, live well.